Hey YouTube, what is going on? Thanks for checking out the Straight SRT8 YouTube channel, where we discuss all things SRT8 related. Today we're going to talk about a really annoying part of our SRTs, more specifically the Jeep SRTs. Above me I have my rear hatch opened up. And the problem I'm going to talk about is right in here, discussing the vibrations that come from this rear panel right here. Let me turn this camera around and get you guys a better view. So I'm talking about right here, if you're driving your Jeep and you hear like a rattling noise and you're not sure where it's coming from, this is where it's coming from. I actually had my wife drive me around where I sat back here, chilling in the back, just listening, trying to figure out where is that noise coming from. I knew it wasn't related to the woofer. There wasn't any kind of vibration of this thing going on. I was fine. The issue was some kind of vibration in the back, and it turns out that vibration came from right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to tear this apart. I'm going to show you guys where the actual problem is, how to fix it, how to prevent it, and then how to put it back together. So it should be a pretty quick, easy to follow video that's going to eliminate the vibrations that occur anywhere back in here, which can be very frustrating and hard to diagnose. So let's get to it. So first things first, you're going to grab your trim removal tool. I've mentioned these before. They are an awesome set of tools. I can go ahead and buy them on Amazon, pretty cheap. Nice and hard plastic, that's what you want. So what we're going to do is start peeling away between the metal, the sheet metal of the door, and then this plastic trim right here. Get in there and start wedging this away, work our way all the way around. Now inside here there are a bunch of internal clamps that you need to help release them. So go ahead and give some pressure, pry it down. What you don't want to do is start prying over here and get it very far down and have this area still completely locked in with the clips, because then you're going to start bending the plastic and you get damage on the plastic, wear marks, and then you're going to actually damage it and potentially crack it in half. So again, be very careful. Start by doing a slow peel across the entire ridge where the sheet metal meets the plastic, and then inside here behind these lights there are clips you got to pull out. So I'm going to try and open this carefully, not remove the clips, show you where the actual clips are, and then finish taking this apart. So once you pry off all those plastic tabs, you can see right here for this rear light, you got a cable right here, and the way back, same thing. So right where these rear lights are, there are two cables, attaching it. So don't do what I just did where it just fell out by accident. But you're gonna go ahead and remove them right here. This plastic tab is. Let me try and get this camera better. You see right in there where that plastic is. That's your connector for the one light. You don't have any right here. And then you have your other connector right here. Again, doing what I'm doing, having it being held up by the strength of this wire is a horrible idea, but I want to show you guys those actual connection points. So when it comes to actually removing these connectors, as you can see right here, there's this little black, or this gray, sorry, color tab. You want to pull this out, and it's going to release this connector right here as well. Black nub that's being held on by this gray plastic tab. You're going to pull up this upper part of this tab, pull it out away from you, and that's going to release that electrical connector. So right here is a better view of this connector. You can see right here that little gray tab, and that locks into right here. And that's how you pull it out. So here's an example of all the different clips and where they're located throughout this black panel. Keep in mind when you put it back together, avoid doing something like this where you bend it sideways and damage it. And then some of these I wasn't careful enough and I actually sheared it off. So now I'm actually missing that. Here's another example where I bent it. So take your time, do a better job than I did, and you shouldn't have an issue. Once that's taken out, now we get to do all this sheet metal. Now it's all bare, ready for exposure. Now what we're going to do is get the actual rattling noise and fix it. The actual noise is way inside here. A bunch of these bolts, or these nuts I should say. Now these nuts do not have any kind of Loctite on them. And because of that, they come loose and they rattle. So what we're going to do is remove some of these nuts. Actually remove all of these nuts and put Loctite on this nut. We have here a 10mm socket. There we are. And it's going to be pretty straightforward. I mean, from here on out, you just putting your socket in there, locating that nut, and unscrewing it. So here's the nut. It's not a locking nut. It's just a regular nut. And where it came from is up in here. This little stud right here. Kind of hard to see. But that stud does not have any kind of Loctite on it. It's just a regular stud. In fact, let me try and get a flashlight in there and show you guys a little bit better. No kind of treatment in there. So what you're actually going to want to do is, again, locate all of your individual nuts and studs and go ahead and take every one of them out. There's a few of them. Take them all out. Put them all back in there using Loctite. Use blue Loctite. So I got here a Permatex thread locker, medium strength. You can use red if you want to. I usually don't use red because then it's obviously like a very, very hard permanent hold. You never know when you gotta take it out. Hopefully never, but as a rule of thumb, I usually use blue. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull out all those, replace them all. I'm using some thread locker, putting that on the actual stud if I can, and if not, I'll put it on the inside threads of this nut. However, if you put on the inside threads of the nut, it's going to mostly come off when you first get engagement on the top of this stud. It isn't going to work its way all the way to the very bottom of the stud where you actually want it. So if you can, try and get in there and put it on the base of the stud where it's going to be secure, and then stick to the nut. So once you're done taking those out, there should be 8 of them. You should have an even quantity on both sides. Got your 8 bolts there. Another point of note, same 10mm socket. You got these 3 bolts right here that hold in your motor for your windshield wiper. While you're here, I turn around a little bit. Here is your locking mechanism for your trunk. There's some Phillips back there. You can go ahead and tighten down. There's some smaller Phillips back here, kind of hard to see. But you want to just go ahead, since you're already here, double check everything, make sure it's nice and tight, make sure your connections are good, and make sure there's no other room for rattling. But again, most of the rattling comes right from those nuts I just showed you guys, which are okay all throughout here, but making sure these are tight isn't going to hurt. These I never had an issue with. They actually have a nice rubber grommet on them, so they usually stay in place. They don't unwind themselves or become loose over time, especially from the vibration. Now one thing worth mentioning too, I did find these 2 nuts right here. Pulled them off, one each side of the car. Same 10mm socket. They were a little bit loose. Took them off. Use Loctite again. Alright, so I'm all done reattaching all the nuts and bolts. Now you want to go through, look at your plastic pieces, and make sure that if you have anything broken, like this, it's probably worth replacing. Anything bent, try and straighten it out. Now one other note too, there are these plugs back here that are for your rear lights. So these do get loose. So on this side right here, I already have it peeled back. This becomes loose. So this is another point for rattling. So make sure you reattach this. It just snaps in there with your 3 different clips. And isn't it nice and snug? Now besides these plastic pieces, there is also these metal clips right here. Again, make sure that they are inside this plastic part and firmly attached. This is going to make sure you don't have any rattling when your part comes back together. And if you have any bent tips, go ahead and reline them for proper insertion. So as I'm putting this back together, I noticed that these little plastic pieces right here. So you can see right here how these plastic clips grab into the sheet metal. So those little tabs right there, they are the only thing that's really good in that first bite, and then it pushes in these other parts and locks in down here to get a really nice firm grasp. Same for right here. You got your leading edge right here, gets over this bump, and right there is where it actually physically locks in. And this little, almost acts like a spring. This top wider, almost like a dish looking thing. This is actually going to grab onto the sheet metal and create a nice, quite nice tight seal. So I looked online, went on Amazon, and I found these replacement pieces. So here's one. They look very similar. I'll turn them over like this. They're extremely similar. The difference being that This one right here, the sidewall where the fin is a little bit more shallow and less material than this one, a little bit less beefy. So the knockoff versions, these guys, they're super cheap. They're not quite as thick and made of a durable plastic as these ones are. And then again, for the other components as well, we have our original right here. Here's a knockoff version. Same thing, really. I mean, they're really similar. One difference I did note is that this inner diameter in between the top larger rings and the bottom ring, the inner diameter right there is a little bit smaller than this inner diameter. Let's see if I can get it real close to each other. You guys can see what I'm talking about. Definitely a little bit of a difference there in terms of diameters. Same goes for this one. This diameter is a little bit different too. However, when you install these pieces, here's an old one, a little bit loose. Here's a new one, a little bit loose too. So no difference in the actual physical installation. And these guys down here, same thing, a little bit loose too, but not a huge deal breaker. So I did go ahead and replace all of these broken and bent pieces with new ones. And anywhere I had one of those old greenish blue pieces, I replaced them out with the new versions as well. The way I can get better adherence to the sheet metal when I reattach it to the vehicle. So you can see right here how these plastic clips grab into the sheet metal. So those little tabs right there, they are the only thing that's really good in that first bite, and then it pushes in these other parts and locks in down here to get a really nice firm grasp. Same for right here. You got your leading edge right here, gets over this bump, and right there is where it actually physically locks in. And this little, almost acts like a spring. This top wider, almost like a dish looking thing. This is actually going to grab onto the sheet metal and create a nice, quite nice tight seal. Alright, so I did go ahead and pull this off after I reinstalled it just to see how good these new plastic pieces are. And they are what I expected. Super cheap and flimsy. So this material right here, you can see how this already sheared off after a single use. The plastic is much cheaper than the stock plastic. The stock one's more compliant, a little bit thicker and stronger. These are obviously a little bit thinner. They're very fragile, break easily. So I'm going to recommend not buying the parts I have for this install. I recommend going with your exact stock parts provided by the dealer. You can see right here how I completely sheared off. So when you start reattaching this, you're going to want to go nice and slow first. Find your spots where you have the clips. Go ahead and just push them in nice and gently. Make sure they're all aligned. And then once you're all aligned, go through and use your fist and just pound it in. If you start pounding it in right away, this is going to happen. Pieces are going to break. Again, these are the aftermarket ones. They're really cheap and chintzy. So they just shatter right away. So to avoid that, be very careful. Just gently push on them, lock them in place. And once they found their hole and their fittings, go ahead and use the bottom of your fist, pound it in, secure nice and tight. Alright, so I did go ahead and pull this off after I reinstalled it just to see how good these new plastic pieces are. And they are what I expected. Super cheap and flimsy. So this material right here, you can see how this already sheared off after a single use. The plastic is much cheaper than the stock plastic. The stock one's more compliant, a little bit thicker and stronger. These are obviously a little bit thinner. They're very fragile, break easily. So I'm going to recommend not buying the parts I have for this install. I recommend going with your exact stock parts provided by the dealer. You can see right here how I completely sheared off. Alright, so that being said, I'm going to go ahead and replace these broken pieces, try and install it more carefully. And then I'm going to go ahead and actually order the stock parts from the dealer instead and use those for my future use. The stock pieces are much better. They last a little bit longer in comparison to these replacement pieces that, as you can see, just break right off. This one actually completely sheared and broke in half. It's just not worth saving a couple of bucks to have constant issues. If they don't install it correctly in the first time, you're gonna get vibration issues in the entire car. So that's my recommendation. I'm still gonna provide the part number for these in case you guys think you can do a better job installing it and be extra careful. But again, these are gonna be rated for one-time use versus the stock ones, a little bit more robust. These are rated for at least more than once use. And then these original pieces over here, do a quick comparison. These guys are not broken. A little bit thicker material, a little bit stronger. These tabs are broken. I've probably changed it about 10 times. This side's perfectly fine. On this side too, a little bit worn of course, but it's not broken. So that's what you get for stock parts in comparison to aftermarket. Definitely a difference in quality. So I recommend sticking to your stock parts if you can. If not, I'll put these in the description below for part numbers on Amazon. Anyway guys, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I got a lot of cool content on the way. I actually just got in right here, got him some new brakes. A little bit of a teaser. The brakes over there, and I got some brakes right here. So next video, it's gonna be actually a mini series. We're gonna go over the brakes, comparing one piece to two piece. So back here we got single piece rotors on the Jeep. Then up front, I had the upgraded two-piece rotors, stock from Brembo. So I'm gonna go over comparing one piece to two piece, go over different brake combinations, go over the different manufacturers of brake pads, which are obviously behind my caliper. It'll be a whole mini series on doing brakes, how to do an actual brake change to in your vehicle, proper steps to use, and all that good stuff. So I'll be seeing you guys soon. But thanks for checking out the Straight SRT channel. If you got questions, as always, drop them below. See you guys next time.